Have you ever been caught in a situation so embarrassing that you just wanted the earth to swallow you whole? Now, imagine that situation, but you're stark naked. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to the people in today's stories. From accidentally bearing it all in front of friends and family to walking straight into the most humiliating birthday suit moments. These real-life confessions will make you laugh, cringe, and maybe even relate a little too much. Ever tried sleepwalking your way into a living room full of guests? Or stepped out of the shower, only to realize your entire birthday party had already arrived? Some of these stories are so ridiculous, you'd think they were made up. But trust me, they're 100% real. So sit back, grab a blanket. You might feel the need to cover yourself after this one. And get ready for some of the most awkward, hilarious, and painfully unforgettable caught in the buff moments the internet has to offer. Oh, and if you've ever had a naked nightmare of your own, drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Reddit True Vault for more wild stories you won't believe are real. Here is our first story. My crush saw everything. The life-drawing nightmare. You know those moments where your soul just leaves your body out of sheer embarrassment? Yeah, this was one of them. Back in college, I was trying to make some extra cash, and a friend suggested a super easy gig, posing for a life-drawing class. You know, the kind where you're totally stark naked while a bunch of art students sketch you in great detail. Sounded a little nerve-wracking, but hey, money is money, and I figured it would be a bunch of strangers, so who cares, right? Oh, how wrong I was. I walked into the art studio, wrapped in a robe, ready to embrace my fate. The instructor gave me a quick rundown, told me to relax and just be natural, as if that was possible. And then I took my place on the little podium. The students were already setting up, some adjusting their easels, others casually chatting. I took a deep breath, dropped the robe, and stood there in all my glory. That's when it happened. I let my gaze wander over the students and locked eyes with my crush, Emily. Front row, sketchbook open, staring directly at me. I froze. Every ounce of confidence I had built up evaporated in an instant. My brain started short-circuiting. Do I run? Do I pretend I don't see her? Do I just die on the spot? Emily, on the other hand, was calm as ever. She tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, and started sketching like it was just another day in class. Meanwhile, her two friends next to her were whispering, giggling, and very clearly discussing every single inch of me. And then came the worst part. I had to hold that pose for 30 straight minutes. By the time the session ended, I was sweating bullets. As I grabbed my robe, Emily casually walked up, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Wow, Jake, you're really confident, huh?" And then she winked. I don't remember how I got home that day, but I do remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wishing I could erase myself from existence. Next up is our second story, fresh out of the shower, and fully exposed when the lights came back on. There are moments in life that make you question every decision you've ever made. This was one of them. It was a regular evening at home, and I had just finished taking a long, relaxing shower. As I was rinsing out the last bit of conditioner, boom, power outage. Everything went pitch black. I stood there, water still dripping, waiting for the lights to flicker back on, but nothing. Now, my house is ridiculously familiar to me. I could navigate it blindfolded. So, thinking everyone was either in their rooms or still out, I figured, why bother grabbing a towel? I'd just make a quick dash to my bedroom. Biggest mistake of my life. I confidently stepped out of the bathroom completely bare, feeling the cool air hit my skin. 2 steps into the hallway. Bam! The power suddenly came back on, and there I was, fully exposed, standing in the middle of the hallway, directly in front of my older sister, my younger brother, and his best friend. Silence. 5 full seconds of absolute silence. No one moved. No one blinked. It was like time had frozen, except for the fact that I could physically feel the burning heat of humiliation crawling up my entire body. Then, as if someone hit the unpause button, we all screamed at the exact same time. My sister, being the only one still capable of rational thought, lunged forward, grabbed my arm, and yanked me toward my bedroom. My brother and his friend, on the other hand, turned 180 degrees and practically sprinted in the opposite direction. As she shoved me into my room, my sister hissed through gritted teeth, "Emily, you better stay in here until Mom and Dad get home, or so help me." I didn't even let her finish. I locked my door, wrapped myself in a blanket, and questioned every decision I had ever made up until that moment. Safe to say, I now double-check for towels and power outages before stepping out of the bathroom. Next up is our third story. Video call gone wrong, and I forgot to lock the door. There are embarrassing moments in life, and then there are moments so soul-crushingly humiliating that you consider changing your name and moving to another country. This was one of those moments. It was a Friday night, my parents were out, and my sister had supposedly gone to a friend's house. So, thinking I had the entire place to myself, I decided to have a little fun with my boyfriend over video call. I set the mood, dimmed the lights, played some soft music, and wore absolutely nothing. I was feeling confident, playful, and just a tiny bit mischievous. Everything was going perfectly until I heard it. The door handle turned, and before I could react, before I could even grab the blanket next to me, the door swung wide open. Standing there was my sister, eyes wide, jaw dropped, taking in the full view. I was frozen. My boyfriend, on the other end of the call, had his mouth open like a cartoon character. And my sister? She just stood there, staring at me like she had just walked in on a crime scene. Silence. Absolute silence. For a brief second, I actually thought maybe she'd just slowly back away and pretend this never happened. Nope, she screamed. I screamed. My boyfriend? He just disconnected the call. Then, as if to make things a million times worse, she stared me dead in the eye, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Welp, didn't need to see that. But here we are." And then she shut the door and walked away like nothing happened. I sat there, mortified beyond belief, blanket now wrapped tightly around me, wishing I could melt into the floor and never be seen again. To this day, we never talk about it. Ever. And now? I triple-check my door before doing anything. We move on to story number 4. The birthday party disaster. As seen by his friend. Lucas' 14th birthday party was supposed to be a fun, completely normal pool party. Just a bunch of kids splashing around, eating junk food, and not experiencing permanent psychological damage. But oh, how wrong I was. We arrived a little early, but Lucas' mom let us in and told us to wait in his room while she ran out for snacks. No big deal. We flopped onto his bed, grabbed his controller, and started a Halo 2 match. And that's when it happened. The door swung open, and there he was, Lucas, standing there, completely, but naked. There was a full 5 seconds of absolute, stunned silence. And in those 5 seconds, my brain went into full meltdown mode. Like, what was I supposed to do? Cover my eyes? Scream? Stare? Look away, but also, not too quickly? And I swear, for a fraction of a second, I noticed something else. Not just shock, but curiosity. My stupid teenage brain betrayed me, and a tiny thought whispered, "So that's what guys look like. Oh God. No. Bad brain. Look away, look away." But before I could even react, Jason shattered the silence by screaming at the top of his lungs. Oh God, my virgin eyes. That set off a chain reaction. Girls shrieked. Guys hollered. Someone dove behind a pillow. Meanwhile, Lucas just stood there, completely frozen, like his soul had left his body. And then, he ran. He spun on his heel and sprinted straight back into the bathroom. The door slammed behind him so hard that a poster fell off the wall. For a solid minute, no one said a word. And then, one by one, we lost it. Laughter erupted from every corner of the room. Uncontrollable, ugly, crying, laughing kind of laughter. Lucas? He refused to come out for 20 minutes. When he finally did, his face was redder than a fire truck, and he wouldn't even make eye contact with any of us. To this day, we never let him forget it. And every year, we remind him of the #1 rule of birthday parties. Always bring a towel. Let's move on to story number 5. My sister SLEPTWALK, and we all wished she had clothes on. I was 11 when I saw something that scarred me for life. My sister, Sophie, was 13 at the time, and apparently, she had this weird habit of sleepwalking. I didn't really care, until one night, it became my problem. It was past midnight, and my parents had invited some of their friends over for a late-night hangout. I was supposed to be asleep, but I snuck downstairs to grab a snack. That's when I saw her, Sophie, walking straight into the living room, completely, and I mean completely, butt naked. For a few seconds, the room was silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My sister just stood there, looking straight ahead like some kind of possessed horror movie character. Then, all at once, chaos erupted. My mom gasped and jumped up. My dad nearly dropped his drink, and one of the guests, Mr. Patterson, choked on his wine. Meanwhile, my brain was short-circuiting. I wanted to look away, but it was like a car crash. I physically couldn't. "Sophie," my mom shrieked, snapping her out of her zombie trance. "What the hell? my dad bellowed. But Sophie? She just blinked, looked around, and in the most casual voice imaginable, she muttered, "Huh, weird," before turning around and strolling back upstairs like nothing happened. My parents scrambled after her, wrapping her in a blanket while I sat there, traumatized beyond words. Mr. Patterson was wheezing from laughter, and his wife had turned completely red from holding back her own giggles. The next morning, at breakfast, I expected my sister to be mortified. But nope. She sat there, munching on her cereal, totally oblivious. "Do you remember anything?" I finally asked. She shrugged. "Not really." "Why?" My dad sighed. "Let's just say you gave our guests a show last night." And that's when it hit her. The way her spoon froze midair, her eyes slowly widening in horror. It was beautiful. She screamed, slammed her forehead against the table, and groaned. "Why am I even alive?" Yeah, I ask myself the same question every time I think about that night. Now, on to story number 6. Standing on a table to change a light bulb, in the worst possible angle. I don't know why I thought changing a light bulb in my underwear was a good idea. In my defense, it was early, I was alone, and my ceiling lamp had been flickering for days. So there I was, balancing on my desk, stretching up to unscrew the old bulb. And then, the door opened. I froze. The only person who could have walked in at that moment was my study group partner, Jason. He was supposed to come over later in the afternoon, but nope, he just had to show up early. For a moment, neither of us moved. Me, mid-reach, standing on a table in the worst position imaginable. Him, standing in the doorway, eyes wide, clearly processing the absolute disaster he had just walked into. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he muttered, "Good morning, good morning, good morning. Sir, you just witnessed something that will haunt both of us for years, and that's all you have to say." I yelped, lost my balance, and nearly sent myself crashing to the floor. He panicked, slammed the door shut, and I heard him practically sprint down the hall. We never spoke of it again. But to this day, whenever I see him in class, I swear I catch him staring at the ceiling, probably avoiding eye contact, or trying to erase that cursed angle from his brain. Next up, story number 7. The bathroom disaster. And the last person I wanted to help me. There are bad ways to start your day, and then there's this. I had just finished showering, feeling all refreshed, when I made the fatal mistake of stepping onto the tile without properly drying my feet. 1 second, I was standing. The next, I was airborne. With a loud thud, I landed flat on my back, knocking the wind out of myself. For a few seconds, I just laid there, blinking at the ceiling, trying to decide if I had just died. Then came the real problem. I couldn't get up. My tailbone felt like it had shattered into a million pieces, and every time I tried to sit up, a jolt of pain shot through my spine. So, naturally, I did what any rational person would do. I yelled for help. The bathroom door burst open, and standing there, looking down at me like I was the dumbest person alive, was my sister. She scanned the scene. Her fully grown brother sprawled out completely naked on the floor like a crime scene victim. She sighed, long and deep, then deadpanned. "Why is it always me?" Before I could even stutter out a response, she grabbed the nearest towel and chucked it at my face. "Cover yourself. I am not dealing with this." She didn't walk out. Nope. Instead, she groaned and stepped forward, muttering something about how she always had to be the one dealing with my stupidity. Then, before I could protest, she grabbed my arm and yanked me up. I stumbled, my legs still wobbly from the fall, and she practically dragged me toward my bed, grumbling the whole way. "You might have actually hurt yourself, idiot. I'm calling Mom and Dad." That was when I realized the towel. I had barely managed to wrap it around myself when she pulled me up, and now, as I collapsed onto the bed, it slipped. For the second time that morning, my sister was forced to witness everything. She let out a strangled noise somewhere between a shriek and a dry heave before whipping around, covering her eyes. "Oh, for the love of, get your life together." I scrambled for the blanket, pulling it over myself with whatever dignity I had left. She stormed out, yelling over her shoulder, "I was gonna call Mom and Dad, but I think you've suffered enough." And yeah, I definitely did. But you bet she still brings it up at every family gathering. Coming up next, story number 8. The nurse's office nightmare. When embarrassment hits its peak. I'm gonna be honest. If I could erase one day from my entire school experience, this would be it. It started during gym class. We were outside doing warm-ups when I suddenly felt off. A weird sensation, like something was wrong. I glanced down, and yep, disaster. Right there, in the middle of the field, in light gray sweatpants for maximum visibility. Panic mode activated. I immediately tied my jacket around my waist and tried to act normal. But of course, our gym teacher, Mrs. Harding, had eagle eyes. "Lily, what's going on?" I stammered something about feeling sick, but before I could escape, she waved over Ms. Caldwell, our school's beloved vice principal, aka the warden. Miss Caldwell didn't ask if I needed help. She just grabbed my arm and marched me across the field, past every single classmate, and straight into the nurse's office. And here's where it goes from bad to burn this memory from my brain. Instead of handing me some wipes and giving me privacy like a normal person, Ms. Caldwell took it upon herself to grab an entire handful of wet paper towels, dunk them in the sink, and brace yourself, start scrubbing the back of my pants. I went rigid, my soul left my body, and the only thing I could do was pray that this was some horrible stress-induced nightmare. Spoiler, it wasn't. And because the universe hates me, two classmates, Emily and Kate, walked in just in time to see Ms. Caldwell going to town on my sweatpants with the determination of a car wash employee. The room went silent. Then Emily snorted. Then Kate broke. And suddenly, they were both howling, wheezing, crying from laughter. Miss Caldwell, completely unfazed, patted my shoulder and said, "There, good as new," before shooing me off to class like nothing happened. For the rest of the year, Emily and Kate would randomly mime scrubbing motions at me across the cafeteria, in the hallways, even during tests. I will never live it down. Ever. Now here's story number 9. A birthday party, a bathroom, and a big mistake. I was about 10 years old when this happened, and to this day, I still haven't lived it down. It was my friend Megan's birthday party, a big deal for a 10-year-old. She had decorations, a cake the size of my head, and way too many kids running around her house. At some point, I needed to use the bathroom, so I snuck away from the chaos. But here's the thing, I had a weird habit back then. Whenever I used the bathroom at home, I'd make myself as comfortable as possible. It was just how I did things. So, naturally, my brain decided that Megan's house was no different. I was in my own little world, blissfully unaware that I was about to make the worst mistake of my life. Just as I was about to, handle business, the door burst open. There stood Kevin. Kevin from my class. Kevin, who sat 2 desks away from me every single day. We locked eyes. Time slowed. I saw the exact moment his brain processed what was happening. His mouth opened then. "Ah!" Kevin screamed. Not just a little yelp, a full-on horror movie shriek. He slammed the door shut so hard that the frame shook. Then I heard the sound of him sprinting down the hall. I sat there, frozen. Did that just happen? Was I dreaming? Nope. That was real. I scrambled to pull myself together, my hands shaking from pure secondhand embarrassment. But the damage was done. By the time I got back to the party, Kevin had already told everyone. The whole party knew. Megan knew. The parents knew. I'm pretty sure even the dog knew. For the rest of the school year, Kevin couldn't even look me in the eye without turning bright red. And me? Well, let's just say I immediately learned to double-check bathroom locks from that day forward. We've all had those moments. The ones that make you want to disappear into thin air. But let's be honest, the stories in this video, they take embarrassment to a whole new level. Maybe you've been caught in an awkward situation, or had a moment so cringeworthy that it still haunts you to this day. If so, we need to hear about it. Drop your most embarrassing story in the comments below. Don't worry, we're all suffering together here. And hey, if you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to Reddit True Vault. We've got even more unbelievable Reddit stories coming your way.